So the first question for you is, when we're drawing a motorcycle, where do you start?
Okay, we're gonna do a super simplified version of this for time's sake.
Sure, sure, sure.
I generally start with forks, because you've
Okay.
got like this nice tube going on, right? There's not a whole lot of pressure here, just like some nice tube thing going on. And then depending on the motorcycle that you draw, frames all look a different way. But generally you have like kind of the gooseneck here, and then you kind of make a trapezoid. Um,
So it's almost like a bicycle frame
Yes,
in a weird way, right? Yeah.
definitely.
Now, are there any types of bikes that are easier to draw than others?
I started off by drawing cafe racers just because like everything's exposed. You don't have to worry about any like weird shapes other than, it being a motorcycle.
Hmm.
Like in comparatively, I feel like sport bikes are really hard to draw because you can't see any of the frame underneath, so you don't have an idea of like what the structure looks like underneath of all that plastic.
Oh, right, yeah.
So from a drawing perspective, it's hard to get an idea of like where everything sits underneath to make the whole.
Right on, right. Right on. Okay, so you got the main frame there, the
Yeah.
fork. Now you're working on.
So this area right here, and you'll see how it kind of like, if you split it in half, it kind of looks the same on both sides.
Oh, yeah.
Then here is the rear springs. Obviously this bike doesn't have a monoshock.
Right.
And then we can make 2 points here. And generally, most motorcycles, the wheelbase, the center of the wheel is going to be on the same line. And if you're doing it traditionally, you can cheat. I mean, I should say digitally. And we make 2 circles.
Insta
Insta
wheels.
wheels.
That's
If you're
right.
doing it traditionally, if you have like a cup, or if you're super fancy, if you have a compass, you can make the wheels however big you want. Or you can just freehand circles, whatever works. And then next up, I'm going to
Are,
add the headlight over here.
all right on. Are there any tricks to doing freehand circles?
I
I mean, I've got 2 small boys, and we actually just practice circles.
feel like
You know what I mean?
it's more about like staying loose and then going over the same area kind of over and over again. And if you need to, turning the paper, because like some people's hands don't create like a natural arc all the way around without turning the paper.
Yeah,
So you
right.
see how like this
Yeah.
arc looks a little bit better than this arc. And so I can just turn the canvas and make that side just a little bit better.
Oh, that's very cool. That's a great tip.
Um,
That's a great tip.
and like it's important to like draw lightly. Don't draw super like hard lines to begin with, because that hurts your hand. But
Hmm.
also because it means that you can build up shapes a little bit easier, and you also have more room to erase those shapes if you need to.
Oh, that's
One of
awesome.
the important rules that I learned at art school is that if you start to find something is wrong, don't just sit there and go over it and over and over and over again until it's like a really dark black. You just need to bite the bullet and erase the shape.
Yeah, cool.
So then I put the gas tank on, and there's like a little seat. And then we'll put some handlebars on there.
You know, handlebars could be tricky.
Yes. Generally, like
You
if
know
you're
what I
talking
mean?
about like a flat shape like this, don't worry about doing the other side of the bars. Just kind of like
Yeah, right.
do the shape that comes towards you, and then the switch housing.
Little
Yeah.
controls and the...
And then I move on to the engine block, and you start with the head,
Ah,
and you put the body there, and then the stator.
well, that's
Back
cool.
body, carburetors, and an airbox. And there are a lot of motorcycles that have an additional part of their frame that kind of comes like this.
Oh, yeah.
And then if you want to, you can put a little cowl on the back. And then a lot of motorcycles like have these like 2 little circles where the
The
valves live.
cans.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you add some wings to disperse the heat. That's a general idea. And you don't forget your brake rotors.
Yeah. How about the chain? How about the chain?
Yeah.
We're also not going far without
Yeah,
a chain.
that comes back.
The chains seem to be pretty easy to do
Yeah.
there.
Especially if you're like thinking about a simplified design, like you're not going to be able to see every link in the chain. So if you just like make a good line there, people get the gist.
Yeah.
And then the swing
That's
arm as
awesome.
well. The swing arm is more important than the chain, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. And then how about exhaust?
So generally that's on the other side.
Okay. Okay.
If you are drawing like something crazy, we'll erase a little bit here. And so it comes out front. And it kind of twists back. We'll make a scrambler. So I'm gonna leave a space here. I'm gonna move this up. There we go. So it comes high. I think also the important part of putting exhausts on bikes is remembering that it has to be attached to the frame somewhere.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Little holes here. Okay.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's really the general idea.
Now, a last question on this before we move on to the main part of the show is, how do you draw knobbies without it being like too time and because I mean, you know, like I'll try and do some of this too for myself too, but like when it comes to doing knobbies, I just don't even try because then I'm just like, you know, it'd be very hard for me to make it perfect and be time efficient.
Yeah, no, totally.
You know?
So generally my rule with tires is that if the exposure, this is going to sound super nerdy, but if the exposure of the camera is high enough for me to see all the parts of the engine, which are normally in shadow, then the tires would just be straight up black. You wouldn't be able to see a whole lot of detail. So then the trick with knobbies is just to like fill in the tires with black and then kind of like
put some rectangles in there.
Kind of like if you were making a castle when you were a kid and you add the little turrets for the archers.
Oh, yes, right. Hell yeah, now that bike is ready to take on some bad roads. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. TKC 80s art concept design there, I'm sure.
Yes.
This is what the tire designers are like, oh, I'm going to put some blocks here, some blocks here. No more science to it than that, I'm sure. Yeah, that's awesome. And look at that, but what a difference that makes on the image.
Yeah, adding like any kind of shading, like if you turn down the frame, then it like kind of retracts to the background more. Adding just a little bit of detail to the seat and a little bit of shading there.
Maybe like a knee pad on the tank, is that hard? That'll really shape the tank out there. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's hot. That's cool.
Little gas tank.
Yeah. And then a badge, gas tank filler. Well, that's lovely. And that only took like 5 minutes. That would take me like 5 days. Especially the knobbies.
Yeah, I saw Whitney is like, I should make it a virtual class. I don't know if I'm qualified to teach people how to do this.
Yeah, there's so much patience and skill. And there's also just personal vision.
Yeah, totally. And like everybody has a different idea of like what like a cartoon bike is supposed to look like. And there are some really incredible artists on Instagram, like Prankarana, like makes these incredible motorcycles, like, and the tires are like just totally freeform and like swishy. He's so cool.
Wow.
Anyway, are we on to the next one, Ben?
Yeah, sure. Awesome. All right. Well, much thanks for that quick art session on how to draw a motorcycle. But now we're going to move on to the real meat of the show.